us a sense, you've had legislation all over the map.
Yes, yes.
What is it with this? What is the appeal of this seat? That why?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm coming full circle. 20 years ago, 1994, I had just left Ernst & Young, starting my own practice. I CPA, I had my master's in taxation, and didn't hit the glass ceiling, but saw the glass ceiling, so decided to start my own practice. Going around networking for clients, and got tapped to be the president of the Asian Business Association. So all of a sudden, I was thrust into politics. Had to go down a lobby at the Board of Supervisors and the mayor for more MWBE legislation. Went to Sacramento, got involved in the White House Conference on Small Business. Bill Clinton invited 1,000 of us from around the country to give him our small business top legislation. And all of a sudden, I got interested in politics. Looking around at the elected officials and thinking I could do a better job, wanting to help people in a more kind of direct and global way than just doing people's taxes every month. And so, 20 years later, after I got into politics, ran for the Board of Supervisors, ran for the Assembly, now my parents actually are very happy and proud of me that I am now running for a tax board. So using all of my education, I also have an MBA. I sat on the Assessment Appeals Board. That was my first commission, and this board actually oversees the assessors, so I have some experience dealing with the assessors and just running legislation for 10 years. Now I think it all kind of makes sense, because this board not only is an oversight body, it's kind of a quasi-judicial body in terms of hearing income tax appeals, but it also promulgates tax regulations. The legislature usually passes legislation but doesn't have any teeth in it, and then they throw it over to the BOE to work out the regs and standards. So it's kind of a job that's meant for me.
Okay, so help me understand your philosophical approach to this. And I guess what I'm trying to understand here is you could take an approach to this that this is a pretty I don't want to say perfunctory, because that's not really what it is, but pretty rote. You have to make judgments. It's like I said, as a judge, essentially, as you say. It is sort of a quasi-judicial board. Is there an agenda you want to accomplish, or do you see yourself as just kind of wanting to be the one to don the robes, so to speak, using a quasi-judicial analogy, and be the decider of these difficult cases?
So I think this is a very important board, right? It generates 35 to 45% of the state's revenues. There's about $8 billion worth of uncollected revenues. So being in the legislature and being elected for 10 years and never seeing a surplus year, I am very sensitive to budget deficits. So I believe we need to go after the underground economy very aggressively. We should put more resources to try to make sure everyone is paying their fair share of taxes, right? So that's one of my agendas. Secondly, I believe that we need to treat taxpayers who are trying to do the right thing, are paying their taxes. I think we need to treat them in a more friendlier way. My feedback right now is that the board is a bit draconian in the way they deal with taxpayers. They assume that
board or
the auditors,
the organization, not just
the board, right? The Board of Equalization, the auditors. Okay. They assume that everybody is cheating, and they are going to assess aggressively and leave the burden of proof on the business to prove that they are not collecting the right amount or they are not charging, the sufficient amount. So there has to be some sort of balance between understanding a business owner. I come from the small business world, right? That's what I represented. And understanding that it is difficult to have a business, overwhelming at times, the amount of paperwork and the number of agencies can be very, very frustrating. And I'll just tell you, so I started an LLC a year and a half ago. It was just me and my husband, a very simple LLC. I have to file with just for our own consulting company since I've been out of office. So just for our own simple two-person LLC, we just are consulting. I have to file with 6 different agencies. Sometimes it's a $25 fee, sometimes it's a $150 fee. And if I miss the deadline, right, there is a pretty sizable penalty, right? So here I am, I'm a CPA, English is my first language. I understand, how to do the research in terms of what I need to do, but every month is a different due date with each of the different agencies. And so I'm thinking to myself, how about these, immigrant businesses, people that don't understand, can't afford a full-time, bookkeeper and accountant to keep track. They're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to pay their taxes. But it is not easy. I will give you an example.
Let me ask you what are the 6 different agencies?
My 6 different, I have to file with the Franchise Tax Board, the IRS, the Secretary of State, IRS, Secretary of State, the State Board of Equalization, the Attorney General's office.
Why AG's office?
Because they want to know that you are a business and they have a filing fee. They want to know who your corporate officers are. So every other year, biannually, you have to file with the Attorney General's office. And then the last one is the San Francisco Assessor's office. Actually, there's 7. Then the San Francisco's Treasurer's office as well, because the business license fee, and then the assessor, they want to know if you have property or payroll. Okay. So that's 6 different agencies, right? 7. 7 different agencies that I have to file like every year, just for my two-person LLC.
So what do you?
And do you think that's wrong?
It's not so much wrong. I understand that everybody needed money, right, the last 10 years, and so a lot of times you want people to file to generate some sort of filing fee, but it's just too much in terms of the dates. There's no coordination between the different agencies to better understand, how many forms, how often, what the due dates are, right? It'd be nice if everything, like the IRS and Franchise Tax Board, everyone knows April 15th, if you're an individual, you file April 15th, right? LLCs, also April 15th. But if you're a corporation, you have to file March 15th. And then now you add on all these other agencies, and they're all over the board in terms of due dates. One is May, one is March.
Do you think you can get these agencies to talk to each other?
I would like to. I'll give you an example. Filting has legislation right now to try to regulate people who are coming before or dealing with the assessor's office in terms of appeals. He wants everyone, tax agents, to file a form, to pay a fee, and then also have another filing date. And I said to Phil, please, can you just coordinate the filing date with other ones so that we're not like filing on another, the 15th or that. So I am trying to, I don't know, in my little way, help legislators understand, now that I've been on the other side back again, how difficult it is, that we need to try to simplify if we can. Make it easier for...
But this only became apparent to you when you when you got out of the legislature?
Well, I hadn't been practicing for 10 years. Right, so I really haven't been on the ground kind of doing people's taxes and individual businesses. But, I've heard from accountants and lawyers that California is difficult to do business in. Yes, we know that. But now, even just as a small business owner, again, I kind of see why they're also frustrated.
If I may, I mean, candidly, you see, no, your opponent's not here. You know, candidly, your opponent doesn't seem to be much more than a name on the ballot, from everything we can tell. And so it's really a question of, for the most part, can we bring ourselves to endorse it or not? And there's no secret we've had differences with it.
Mm-hmm. With legislation.
With legislation.
Okay.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Okay.
AB 1987.
Okay. Is that the pension bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Explain to us, what were you thinking?
Trying to deal with pension reform, right? Double dipping and spiking. I think the legislation that Assemblymember Furutani carried the year after, which the governor signed, was essentially the same bill that I carried.
You're talking about the governor's pension reform bill?
Yes.
Well, actually, it's 2 years later.
2 years later.
Yeah,
right. So.
And it wasn't anywhere close to the same bill.
Okay. All right. So, but there were aspects of it in the bill.
No.
No?
Not really. They were really apples and oranges. Because your 1987 primarily dealt with 37 Act, retirement systems. The PEPRA dealt with pension systems globally, and then there was a rider bill that was added at the last moment because of things rewrote. They dealt with the 37 Acts. And that was not Furutani's bill, that was Joan Buchanan's bill. So basically, there was very little overlap between what you were talking about and what Furutani / the governor's bill was talking about.
Okay. Then I would have to say that we beg to differ, I guess, on that big issue. Mm-hmm. But I have had 60 bills signed by 2 different governors over 6 years. I'm sorry that we didn't agree on that issue, but I think I've taken a leadership role in trying to tackle issues that needed to be tackled. I haven't been one that passes bills that just tweak bills, tweak existing laws, but really try to deal with problems. And some of my bills took 6 years to pass. But I'm just very proud of, I think, my advocacy, whether it's, banning phthalates, first in the nation bill regulating tattoo and body piercing establishments,
I mean,
and others.
on many of your pieces of legislation we've looked at over the years, we probably agree with you.
Right.
Okay? But this office that you're seeking is, to be blunt, a numbers and nuts and bolts type of thing with attention to details that must be paramount. And when we went through AB 1987 discussion, debate with you, at the get-go, it seemed like either you didn't understand what was in your own bill, or frankly, you were just carrying water for a special interest. Because it didn't do what you said it purported to do. It actually did just the opposite, as we reported. So, I mean, you watched everything we went through during that whole discussion. I assume you read what we wrote. And we spent, frankly, 5 months trying to stop you from doing a very bad thing. So help me understand, and now you're saying it was essentially the same as the governor's bill. It was nowhere near what the governor's bill was. So help us understand. Because we need more confidence in your attention to detail for this office. That's the thing. Help us understand.
I think I did work with you and your office over the 5 months. We did have conversations. I did read your articles. We, you know, did take amendments to the bill, but in the end, we were trying to tackle the double dipping and the spiking. And sorry, we didn't agree on it, but, you know, I believe based on, I have an open door policy. I talk to everybody. I talked to, you know, some of the agencies we were trying to reform because those were the most egregious agencies. And they didn't like it, but we felt that we needed to deal with that.
So when you say some of the agencies you were trying to reform, what comes to mind?
Police and fire.
But the original version of it, from everything I've understood, and from reading it, it would have locked in the very pension spiking you were trying to eradicate, especially in terms of the counties, this one in particular, that were allowing terminal pay at the time.
Well, okay, that was not my intention to lock it in. It was to try to stop it.
And just there is one thing that in hindsight has been bugging me about all this, okay? And not to make this too personal a question, but just around that same time from the accounts I've read is about the time that you met your husband, who is active with the firefighters. The very group that stood to benefit perhaps the most from these provisions. Was there any overlap there?
No.
Okay.
Honestly, we were trying to attack the problem and also the perception problem that some of these chiefs, right, were doing exactly that. And for the firefighters, they knew that there are people who take advantage of the system. Whenever you look at the highest paid workers in any city and county, what are always the top, 5, right? And it's because of things like overtime or, pension spiking.
The top 5, what do you mean?
Top 5 paid workers.
I'm sorry, I'm not tracking. Help me.
No, if you say who are the top 5 or 10 employees of any city and county every year, who are they normally?
They're usually top managers, yeah.
But a lot of them are firefighters or cops, right? And those couple of years, there were a bunch of chiefs that kind of did that.
Right, but you understand the same principle was happening at the time at the rank and file level too. The same spiking.
Okay.
And the way you'd written the bill actually would have locked in the ability to do that spiking, not eliminated it.
Okay, that was not my intention to allow others, but to deal with the most egregious
but
cases.
Actually it wouldn't have dealt with the most egregious, and it would have locked it in. Which is what we wrote at the time and explained, which is why the bill eventually got amended. But in the meantime, Buchanan and DeSaulnier and Chung, Chung as a sponsor and the others as co-authors dropped off, as you might recall, as we detailed what was going on.
I mean, I worked with legal counsel on it. And our labor committee on it, our speaker's office as well.
So, how would you, if elected, which frankly you're going to be elected unless something very surprising happens, how are you going to approach these sorts of details and such when you're on the Board of Equalization? Yeah. Like I said, we're looking for some
Yep.
You know, yeah, how you operate. You know, we're trying to get a guide here. You know?
I'm gonna continue to be open to both sides. So whether you agree with an issue or disagree, I am going to be willing to meet with everyone. I think that's the best way to make decisions, is to hear from all sides, because all sides, you know, one side doesn't always give you the other side. I'm going to try to hire the best staff that I can, technical staff. You know, there's 5,000 people in the BOE, in that agency. I am assuming that there are very smart people who will be called in on these issues. I am going to continue to be proactive and go out to see the businesses as well. I think the best way to understand how a business is, one of the ways is to actually go out and come to an office, look around, you know, talk to employees, versus sitting in an office and just dealing with lobbyists who give you a PowerPoint. And I learned when I was on the Assembly Ag Committee over 3 years, I did probably 80 tours of different farms, so I can understand exactly what is going on, and I think that made me a stronger legislator when I voted either for or a bill or against a bill, because I actually went up in the helicopter, figured out what the processes were when you're dealing with pesticides, right? What the process is, you know, when you're a grower, and how much water you use, and what type of systems you're using. Because it's very easy to make those assumptions and believe in it, but until you actually see it to verify, I think that's very important. So for me, you know, I can trust, but I need to verify. So I do, I'm going to continue kind of that model that I have been using at least for the last 6 years.
So come back to this notion that you discussed a little bit about consolidation of dates and filing and such, because I'm sure there are a lot of businesses out there that would, frankly, welcome this. Okay. How do you make that happen? Because these are such disparate agencies that practically never talk to each other. How are you going to pull this off?
Well, a lot of it was done through legislation, and since I understand the legislative process, if it needs to be changed through legislation, then we can change it through legislation. Some of it was done, you know, through the internal administration processes through the BOE. You know, I think each agency has that. Either it's by statute or it was promulgated through the regs. So, you know, if I wanted to really put my arms around it, I would have to get all these agencies together and really convene a stakeholders meeting. I've done it before when I got elected to the Board of Supervisors. One of the things I thought didn't make sense was San Francisco was the only city and county that had a payroll tax. And so at that time in 2000, the early 2000s, all these biotech companies and high-tech companies were locating outside of San Francisco, Emeryville, South San Francisco, because we had a payroll tax. So I convened for 18 months a stakeholders meeting with every group. I invited everyone to the table, you know, invited experts to come and talk to us, figured out, you know, where we were generating revenues in the city, because you can't take away a revenue without replacing it. And within 18 months, we came up, or the mayor at the time, that was Gavin Newsom, he came up with 2 pieces of legislation, I think it was like E and F at the time, that would replace the payroll tax. Unfortunately, it didn't pass, but fast forward 10 years later, David Chu took on that issue, and now we finally got rid of the payroll tax, and, you know, Twitter and all these other companies have located in San Francisco. So I'm willing to do the work. If an issue needs to be...
But on this issue in particular, it would seem to me that it would have been a whole lot easier to do the work while you were a legislator, not while you're on this board. And so is this just something you discovered after you gone back into the public or the private world? And because when you were a legislator, did you work on this or try to get anything done?
Well, I didn't work on these particular issues, but I worked on franchise tax board issues, assessor issues that those people brought to me, not necessarily because I have kind of seen it firsthand. But now,
So once
for the
you've seen
last,
it firsthand, it's made you.
it's made me realize. For the last year and a half, I mean, I have been termed out and out of office, and so I have been out in the field, all over the district, all over the state, meeting with people, business owners, people who deal directly with the Board of Equalization, and just asking them, what is right with the agency, what is not right with the agency.
Remind me, what were the BOE pieces of legislation, or franchise tax code for that matter, pieces of legislation that you carried? I'm trying to, I looked down your list of legislation, I don't remember specifically.
One was having to do with airplane assessments, where, they land, to make sure that there is kind of uniformity. Instead of, if you land in Oakland, you get taxed at the Oakland rate. You land in San Jose. I mean, we have all different, tax rates. So that was one for the assessor. Another one for the assessor's office was allowing them to perform their audits over a longer period of time. Before, they used to have to audit certain companies every year, and my bill allowed them to audit every 2 years and kind of raise the level so that they didn't have to actually, go after the bigger companies.
So, and we sort of started this and got sidetracked, but, and I don't want to keep you here too long. If you were to give us a sort of succinct why it is that this job fits you, just sort of in succinct, and why you work best for it, it would be what?
Because I am a tax accountant by training, and I have represented taxpayers and also been a legislator for 10 years, understanding the process in terms of how to fix problems or better regulate industries that need to be regulated.
Are there industries out there that need to be better regulated that you've identified, or just is that a general term?
I think within each industry there are people that are not paying their fair share and trying to go around the laws. For example, there are people repairing cars out of their garage, for example. Instead of starting a real business and paying the taxes and filing.
Along that line, if you were to sort of restructure our tax system a little bit here, talk about the discussion between taxing goods versus taxing services and where you come down on that. What do you think?
Yes. So I think, our economy has changed over the last 150 years from a manufacturing economy to a service economy. And that's one of the reasons that we face uncertainties in terms of how much revenue is going to come in every year. In a perfect world, I think we would change our tax system to a tax on services, maybe a smaller tax on goods, but also a tax on services, because clearly that's where we are going. But as you know, it requires 2/3 of the legislature to vote on it. Even if we have 2/3 of the Democrats, there are still a handful that are running in very moderate seats. So getting 2/3 to change that system would be, I would say, very, very difficult. Secondly, once you exempt one service, then that opens up kind of the genie box, the genie's bottle to other services. And then that's where you have every special interest and every legislature who represents, you know, my dad was a lawyer, my dad's a doctor, well, whatever. You know, we can't tax this. And so the only way I think we're going to change it is if we go to the ballot. And then you have people who don't want their newspaper tax, they don't want their haircut tax, they don't want their,
We lost that battle a long time ago.
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, my favorite argument is one we had in one of these rooms of Steve Forbes, when he was pushing the flat tax so much, and we started talking about flat tax and this, and that there is some basis for what he's talking about until, and of course people assume when they start doing this, they say, well, of course I'll get my home exemption.
Right.
No.
Right. Charitable contribution.
No. And you start saying flat tax me, because the second you do that,
Right.
you're
Right. And so, you know, change is very difficult. And unless there is some overriding crisis or demand, I think, you know, having any tax on services is going to be very difficult in this state.
Anything we haven't covered that you want to cover? I know there's one thing you'd rather we hadn't covered, but saying this.
I expected
Yeah, I'm sure you
the
did.
conversation. I don't know. What else?
I mean, are there any key points that we should keep in mind?
Let's see. I mean, I think I'm a practical person. You know, I'm a numbers person. You know, does it make sense, for example, that we had two court cases, the Lucent and the Nortel legal cases? The BOE fought it. They lost twice. To me, that has been a tremendous waste of time and energy for, you know, the last 8 years. You know, I'm just going to always weigh the benefit versus the cost. Does it make sense? You know, is it easy to collect? Is it easy for the board to audit? I think those decisions are gonna come into consideration, and having the experience on both sides, I think I'll bring a different perspective to the board.
okay.
Thank you, then.
Thanks.
We
Okay.
appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.